Hey, what's going on, guys? This is LaToria, and I am here with my friend Dieula, and we are initiating our first soul care sessions that's presented by FCA. Um, and I'm really excited. So we're just going to jump straight into it and just know that this is a space specifically intentioned for you ladies. It's a place where we're hopefully going to talk about the issues and the situations that matter the most to you. And our prayer is through the help of women like Dieula, you guys will be able to have some tools and just some pointers for how to navigate life in general. At the end, I will always offer an opportunity for you guys to leave some questions and suggestions and that kind of thing. And so feel free to do that. And we're going to jump right in. I asked my sister Dieula to tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you?
Yeah. Well, I am honored to be a part of this thing that you're doing here and creating spaces for women to be able to share, to talk, and to learn. I think learning is power, even in the area of mental health. Oftentimes we think, it's our brain, it's our health. We know what we're doing, but the reality is sometimes we need to learn and we need validation. We need to know if what we're doing is right, if the way we're handling stress and challenges is a good method, a good strategy, or what else we can add on to what we already have going on. For me, I think that's how I have been able to sustain my mental health. It's because I've learned from different people, and I've learned that some of what I'm going through, it's normal. I'm not the only one, or, like some of my responses, it's not I'm not being over dramatic, or I'm
Right.
being sensitive. So I've learned over time that these things are normal and that feelings are normal. We were created with feelings. So I hope that's what you get out of this, is validation for who you are, how you are, and who you are becoming, right? And with that said, my name is Dieula Previlon. I am a licensed professional counselor. I'm also an ordained minister. So throughout my life, I've done a whole bunch of work, missions work. I've traveled around the world, really, Kenya, Uganda, Congo, Brazil, Haiti. I've even done some work right here in Dallas jail, just talking about trauma, especially for women and healing when it comes to trauma. Trauma is the thing that I study, and I want to help women, find healing from trauma. And once they find healing, or as they're finding healing, they can also find their purpose. Because I do believe that trauma, whether it be, trauma from your past childhood or racial trauma or other things that are happening with you, I do believe some of those undiagnosed and things that we are unaware of can potentially hold us back from living our best lives, from living the life that we were created to live. So that's what I do. In all of the work that I do, I try to help women, heal from trauma and be released to live out their best lives. I am married for 22 years. I'm the mother of 3 young adult sons. My oldest is 22, and we have twins that are 19. And I have a whole bunch of sisters and sister-in-laws. I mean, we're a big Haitian family. I was born in Haiti, grew up in New Jersey. So that's a little bit about me and the work that I love to do.
That's so awesome. That's
Yeah.
so awesome. It sounds like you could write a book about your life, sis.
Let
Just
me
the
tell you,
thing.
yes. In fact, I am in the process of doing that.
Hey, you got a
Looking for
book in
ideas.
you. You got a book in you, sis.
Yes.
That's so awesome. Well, I saw or I heard that you mentioned childhood trauma and racial trauma, and I'm sure that as women of color, a lot of times there's probably like intersectionality with those things, right? Like childhood trauma and race-based trauma and just
Yeah.
trauma in general. Can you help us kind of have just some basic definitions for trauma in general, and then
Right.
race-based trauma.
Yeah, yeah. So trauma is really an event or events or series of events that take place that is out of the ordinary, that we were not expecting, right?
Mm.
That just takes our breath away. And when trauma happens, it causes our entire being, our entire body to go into protective mode, you know? Our entire being, it's almost like God, it is not just almost, it's like God created our body with defenses to help protect us from, you know, things that are unexpected, things that are out of the ordinary, like, you know, abuse, like rape, like natural disasters, like, you know, racial violence and all of those things. They're not normal. They're not ordinary. These are
Yeah.
not things we should be okay with. You know, these are not things we should find as norm. Like, you know, we shouldn't, we're not supposed to be born and then wake up and have to deal with abuse, for example. You know, I
Right.
mean, these things, they are out of God's design for us, you know? And so these things are traumatic. They cause our system to go into these defense mechanisms to protect us and to keep us alive,
Yeah.
right? And so we have, you know, sometimes some therapists call big T trauma. You know, these are the big events like, you know, abuse, assault, huge and natural disasters and things like that. And then some have named, you know, little T trauma. You know, those are traumatic things that happen, you know, things that we may see the neighbor go through, or we may, it may be secondary trauma, or it may be an event or like a mugging or something like that. It may be traumatic and we can easily move on from those things. But the reality is a little T trauma, it's all relative, big T or little T trauma, because some people can get over big T trauma maybe faster than some people can get over little T trauma, right?
Sure.
So it all depends on the person, how they are wired, how they're designed, and their resources around them. If they're part of a community that loves them and cares for them, that will decide whether they have the resiliency to recover from whether it be little T trauma or big T trauma. Now, racialized trauma is in that category. The thing with racialized trauma is that yes, it's unexpected. Yes, we you know, it's not something that is norm, but it's so pervasive in our society that we're constantly interfacing with it, right? And constantly dealing with it. So what happens is that sometimes racialized trauma can develop into PTSD, which means that you're you are hyper focused and hyper aware all the time. Like your defense mechanism, you know, is constantly on, just waiting to fight, you know, either fight, flight, or freeze. So with racialized trauma, it's like our nervous system is always on high alert, getting ready to defend us. Like trauma, one traumatic event, you know, causes us to go into fight, flight, or freeze, and then we're expecting that this event ends and we move on with our life and we kind of heal from that one event, right? Racialized trauma is potentially something that we have to engage with constantly. And so our psyche, our you know, nervous system is constantly prepared, you know, preparing itself to fight, to defend us.
Wow.
Right? And so for people of color who live in a majority culture, we're constantly having to engage and navigate and constantly having to deal with these racialized trauma, to constantly there. For example, there's a friend, a white couple we had dinner with, and we always tell them, you know, when we come to your neighborhood, we have to be aware of our surroundings. we have to be aware who's going to be there, who, you know, are we safe?
Yes.
The constant question for people of color in racialized society is the question, will we be safe?
Yes.
So will your neighborhood be safe? So, you know, my friends, my white friends don't necessarily get that because they never have to really prepare themselves
Sure.
in case they are having to deal with racialized trauma, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that question of preparing, will I be safe, is a response to racialized trauma. A real response to racialized trauma. And then the problem
Wow.
is that our nervous system is so ready to deal with racialized trauma is that sometimes it may be broken, right? That sometimes even when there's no trauma happening, it's broken because we're now still in fight, flight, or freeze mode, that any sudden move, you know, we're jumping. I don't know if you guys were watching the speech for Kamala Harris when she and Joe Biden did the speech a week and a half ago, and they were playing fireworks, and she flinched. She flinched, and me and my therapist friend were like, "Did you see that? That's racial trauma response. That flinching of the fireworks, that's trauma response." So yeah, you know, that sudden,
Yes.
you know, that's
Absolutely.
racial trauma response. Yeah.
My Lord, like, and just listening to you unpack that, I'm exhausted just hearing you explain it. And I feel like, and at the same time, I feel like you're telling my life story. Like, like, you know what I mean? For me, my default, I guess, would be fight. And so I am always, or often, majority of the time, in this kind of perpetual tensed state.
Yes.
Where, like, if you can imagine, like, my legs are bent, and I my friends always say, like, you're always squared up, like you like you live in this perpetual state of being ready, you know, at all times. So to hear you give language and definition for why that is so helpful. I mean, and I think about just the stereotype of the angry Black woman.
Yes.
If you're constantly dealing with that broken perpetual state of trying to deal with trauma, any human being may come off a little irritated after living in that reality for years and years and years. Wow. I guess my next question would be, like, specific to women, because, you know, that's who this chat is for, you know, is women, predominantly, you know, in the South Dallas area. And so, like, what does that trauma, how does that trauma manifest, you know, in our lives, with our kids, in our bodies? Like, what are some examples of how that trauma might manifest?
Yeah, you know, it manifests in so many different ways. You know, I'm thinking about young adult women who are in school, for example, in high school, you know, and people who are not trauma informed. And they are interacting with these young women. Then college age, you know, professors who are not trauma informed, people who are caretakers who are not trauma informed. And then, you know, as adults trying to date, in a scene where people are not trauma informed. Not only are people not trauma informed, those out there, we aren't trauma informed either, right? So we're dealing with this thing that we don't even know about. We're not even aware what this thing is doing to us. We just see impact of it. You know, sometimes we can see the impact that we can't keep jobs, we can't keep relationships, we can't, you know, manage our lives, you know, failed attempts at finding our purpose, our calling, you know, because we're constantly, you know, navigating fight, flight, or freeze. And so these things are sometimes, you know, the symptoms of how we're being impacted by racialized trauma, right?
Yeah.
And so it's important for us to know, you know, the impact. Sometimes physically we are impacted by racial trauma, and not sometimes, all the time. You know, the sleeplessness,
Mm-hmm.
the you know, hypervigilance,
Right.
you know, always on high alert. Women especially, because we're not just dealing with racialized trauma, we're also dealing with gender issues, right? And gender violence and all of those things. So we have those two parts combined. So we're dealing with sexism in the workplace, and
Mm-hmm.
we're dealing with racism. So for Black women, it's compounded. So over time, as we're stuffing and dealing and seeing opportunities pass us by,
Yeah.
seeing relationships, others getting relationships, and we can't, because the statistics for Black women in relationships, I mean, it is abysmal, right? There's a book called Eloquent Rage by Brittany Cooper. She's a professor at Rutgers. And I would recommend for Black women to read it, just to read the sheer magnitude statistically of how Black women are denigrated and how Black women are overlooked. And just to see how trauma, racial trauma, and gender, and gender, and sexism, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and all of those isms impact us, you know,
Right.
and to see statistically, you know, what that does to us.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a great book, you know, just as you were sharing about, you know, the angry Black women, there's a reason to be angry, because you have all these things impacting you and compounding, and it impacts us because we're having
Yeah.
to hold it together, right? All the time. Because if truth be told, because of all the things that's happened to us, we should be in a perpetual state of rage all the time,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We
James
should,
Baldwin said that, right? Like,
yes, you know,
yeah.
all the time. We should not be, you know, managing our lives. We should not be excelling. We should not be doing anything worthwhile. But because we have been holding a lot, you know, we have been
Mm-hmm.
keeping a lot, that we are not constantly in a state of anger or lashing out, right?
Right.
But it's still impacting us, because Black women, we lead when it comes to hypertension, heart
Mm.
disease, cancers, and, you know, fibroids,
Yeah.
you know, just women's issues. I mean, all kinds of things. We are leaders in these categories, because just because we're not lashing out externally, we're internalizing a lot of the racialized trauma and the sexism and the
Yeah.
gender violence and all of that. So we're internalizing it. It's like, instead of lashing out externally, we are internalizing the pain and the suffering, and we're not taking care of ourselves well. So it's impacting us over time. Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So that's a lot, sis. Like,
It
it's
is.
so interesting how, you know, it's not necessarily a normal part of culture for us to be even aware of these things. For
Nope.
generations, we just carry it and go on, and then you live and die, then the next generation comes and it's just the same thing perpetuated, you know? So
Exactly.
like, how can we, or what are some ways to release that are healthy? I mean, you know, I'm sure it would probably feel good to go off and cuss some people out and let them
Right.
know how you feel, you know, but that could cause you to lose your job or your
Right.
relationship or whatever. So like, what are some healthy ways to release all of that stuff that we can have a tendency to internalize as a result of the trauma?
Yeah. I mean, you know, the thing for Black women, there are some things we have within us
Mm,
that naturally can create this healing that we need from racialized trauma and sexism, right? For example, we're good with community, you
yeah.
know, we, you know, our communities, whether it be in churches, in big families, in the Sunday after church dinners, the gathering, the getting together, the seeing another Black woman and say, Black queen, you are beautiful, you know,
Yeah.
the coming together and cutting it up and
Yeah.
dancing and singing and the arts and all of those things. We're so good at those things, right? And so naturally, I think we gravitate towards one another in such a way. We just need to kind of craft it in a way that truly gives healing. Because what white supremacy and all of these systems do is that sometimes it can pit us against one another, right?
I've
And so
experienced that.
yes, you know, where we see other Black women against other Black women, but if we can use that power and channel that energy and really support one another and elevate one another, we're creating another circle of healing for one another, where we can sit down and say, sis, you are beautiful today. You are doing this thing. You are so worthy of this art that you're doing. Like when we speak life into each other, that's where our healing comes from. And so community is one thing. Community that loves you, that embraces you, that sees you, where you're not having to work so hard, because 24/7, we're in workplaces, we are in different boardrooms where we're having to put a face on. We can't be too angry. We can't be too quiet. We can't be too this, too that. We can't wear our hair this way. We can't wear this clothes that way. But when we get together, that's when we let our hairs down. Wear your bright color, sis. Put that head wrap on, sis. You know, wear your little midriff shirt, sis, you know, like look pretty, put your little makeup on if you want to, you know, whatever it is that it is. When you come with your sisters, you sit with your sisters in that circle. That's where you get to, I can cut it up. I can speak in the tone that I want, in the language that I want, in the way that I want. And I am accepted, I am seen, and I am received. I am, you know, celebrated and not just tolerated, because a lot of people tolerate us, but they don't celebrate us. So these healing circles, that's where we find healing. So that's a beginning, is to make sure that we have these healing circles. Other things that we can do for ourselves is work out. Go for a walk, do something physical for your body, do something physical where your body can really express some of that angst, some of the negative energy. You know, whether you're boxing, whether you're boot camping. I boot camp, and Black girls can lift weights.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Let me tell you, one of my friends, she's over 60, and she's competing when it comes to lifting and, you know, deadlifts and things like that. I'm like, that's right. Black women can lift weights.
I love it.
And so for me, that's been my saving grace, is lifting weights, boot camp, running, and doing something physical for my body to release some of that angst. The other thing I would recommend for Black women is to learn your body. Learn about what your body is telling you. And trust what your body is telling you, and pay heed to what your body is telling you. So if you're scanning your body and you're trying to find where all the tension is, and you feel a tension in your shoulder, you don't just say, oh, that's nothing. Oh, that is something. You better pay attention to this tension that you have here in your shoulder. Or if you're having constant stomach aches, pay attention to that. You know, don't ignore it and pass it off as nothing. It is something. So pay attention to your body, scan your body, be kind to your body. You know, don't just keep hustle through and push through. There are some days we're just tired and we're not going to do anything. You know? So things like that, you know, is
absolutely
to pay attention.
Briefly, is there any insight that you would give or application as far as like from a faith perspective for that same idea of release, or kind of not necessarily self-medicating, but something to kind of a tool to use in the midst of maybe being in between counseling sessions or something like that, as you're just dealing with trauma day to day.
Yeah, yeah. You know, the great thing that I've seen online in the past few months is that there are so many creatives that are doing great things for Black women,
Mm-hmm.
and offering, you know, services for Black women, lots of stuff online. Me and some friends have started doing some things called soul reparation. And it's really this idea about, you know, this idea about healing, that healing circle for Black women, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So we have that going on. So there's many creatives who are doing similar things. But from a faith-based perspective, you know, meditation
Mm-hmm.
is great. Prayer is
Mm-hmm.
great things that you can do. Finding that community that loves you, that community of faith. I know for many Black women in this season, there are many places that are not safe for us as far as church is concerned. And I want to name that.
Yeah.
Because I've heard of the fatigue and I've heard of the betrayal that many Black women feel, especially when they go to different predominantly white institutions,
Mm-hmm.
you know, churches and whatnot. I would
Yeah.
say, you know, pay attention to what you're needing. If you need a break, take a
Mm-hmm.
break. You know, go
Yeah.
with a friend somewhere else. If you need a break, you just need a break. And when I say break, I'm not talking about a break from Jesus.
Right. Yeah.
You know, a break from an institution is not the
Yeah.
same as a break from Jesus. You know, we can't
Right.
break from Jesus because Jesus is our source. If we break from our source, then
There's
where
no life.
there's no
Yeah.
life, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm not talking about breaking. No, I'm talking about the Sunday morning. You know,
Yeah.
I found that, you know, there are great ways to connect with God that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the church itself.
Sure.
So whatever it is, in whichever way that you connect with God, whether it be through the church or
Mm-hmm.
even without the church, you can still do so many other ways. And the thing is, with this season of COVID, I think many churches are learning to put their services online. So seriously, you can find a life-giving service in, you know, Omaha, Nebraska, in Seattle, in
Right.
Jersey, in DC. You know,
Yeah.
if your local church is something that's causing you to pause and, you know, not giving you life, visit some churches where you can feel, you know, you can appreciate their worship. But
Yeah.
you know, I'm writing a book now about, you know, integrating um, counseling techniques and biblical scriptures to heal from trauma.
Wow.
So, because I really believe in integrating the two. When you
Mm-hmm.
integrate the two, I believe that's where holistic healing comes from. So,
That's so good. I'm excited about that
me
book.
too.
Please
Me
let us
too.
know,
Yeah.
when you release that.
Yes.
Um, so really quick, before we run out of time, we will be back again next month just to continue this conversation. But before we're done, I want Dieula to give us her contact information. Let us know if you're taking on new clients, or if you're, taking a season of rest, if there's resources that these ladies can be looking into in the meantime and in between time before next month.
Yeah, yeah. So you can find me online. If you go on my website, DieulaPrevilon.com, which is DIEULA PREV as in Victor, ILON.com. And you can send me a message. If you're looking for a referral, I can refer you. If I can't take you as a client, if any of the stuff that I talked about tonight, like online resources, I can also point you in the right direction as well. So start with the website and you can find all of my socials on there.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, ladies, if you guys have any questions, thoughts, feelings, anything that comes up that you want us to pray for, anything that you want to hear us talk about that's specific to your life and your situation that you may need some insight on, please feel free to email me. You can find me at LaToria Wilson at FCA.org. And this video is actually going to be up on YouTube for you guys to come back and listen to all the nuggets that Dieula was giving us. And we will be back again, Lord say the same, next month. Thank y'all for watching.
All right. Bye.
Bye.